Differences are seen with our eyes. And you don't see spirit with your eyes. You see it with a vision that's internal. So, God is love. And God creates after His likeness and His image. And again, we've projected this all onto God. And a lot of people think that He created this in His image, so He's got a body, and so we have a body. And that's not what it's talking about at all. You are love. There's a great line in A Course in Miracles that says this: teach only love, for that is what you are. If God is love and God created you after His likeness and image, then what must you be? Love. Does that make sense? Do we always remember that? No. Now we're back to that first verse in John. We don't always remember. But that's who you are. And it doesn't matter what you call it. We're learning more about what God is. We're learning more about what love is every day when we hold Him in our awareness, when we see it in other people, when we feel it in ourselves. When we realize that other person's needs are no different than ours. That's God. That's love. In the introduction to A Course in Miracles, it says this: the Course does not aim at teaching the meaning of love, for that is beyond what can be taught. It does aim, however, at removing the blocks to the awareness of love's presence, which is your natural inheritance. Your natural inheritance, it means that's what God gave you, was love. That's how He created you, was love. That's why it's your natural inheritance. Does that go for everybody on the planet, yes or no?
Yes.
Everybody. Everybody?
Everybody.
Everybody?
Everybody.
How about the jerk at work? Them too. Everybody. Absolutely everyone. It's everyone's natural inheritance. And it is beyond what can be taught, but it can be experienced. It's another great line in A Course in Miracles that says, a universal theology is impossible, but a universal experience is not only possible, but necessary. And what is that universal experience? Love. And if God is love, then that universal experience is God, and we got to take it out of the context of religion and spirituality and everything else and realize it's just about love. That's all it's about. That verse goes on to say this, or that's in that section: the opposite of love is fear, but what is all-encompassing can have no opposite. Wow. Now take that in for a minute. The opposite of love is fear, but what is all-encompassing can have no opposite. Isn't that what we say every Sunday morning? There's only one presence, one power. It has no opposite. Now it does in our thinking, and it does in our imagination. It does when we don't have God in our awareness. It seems like there's something else, but in truth there isn't. For a long time, I worked in corporate America, and a lot of motivational training, sales training, corporate training. I would go into corporations as a consultant and write their training packages and so on and so forth. Worked a lot in sales. I did a lot of network marketing for a while. I know a lot of people think that's a bad word. But I used it as my way of being of service. It was my ministry. And I built some pretty large sales organizations doing it that way. I built 3 different sales organizations that had over 50,000 people in them each. I had people in different countries around the world in my sales organization. I opened up Mexico for a company. It was an international company. So I would go in and write these training programs and do presentations and training and motivation. But what I would always teach my people is not about the product and not about the compensation plan. I would always tell them this: work harder on yourself than you do the product or the compensation plan, and you'll be more successful. And I would teach them the things I'm teaching you, except I couldn't put it in spiritual language. It was done in a little different language. And then after a while, I really got a message from my internal guide that it was time for me to move more into the spiritual sector than the secular. And that's about the time that we came from California to Cleveland. And most of you know the rest of the story. Here I am. Got my ordination. Got 2 ordinations. And now I'm here as your spiritual director. That wasn't part of the plan for me to be a spiritual director. I was actually going to write a book and do some more trainings and do it more in the spiritual sector. But I'm so glad the Spirit led me here with you folks doing what I'm doing here. And I thought, you know, this is great. Now I don't have to hide this in other terms. I can actually come out and call God, God, and Spirit, Spirit, and, you know. But one of the biggest lessons I've learned since I've been here, and it was learned very serendipitously, is that it doesn't matter what language you use. As long as people are finding a connection with each other, as long as people are finding love, as long as people are finding healing, as long as people are giving up their fear and their guilt and their doubts. So I was very blessed to have a man come into some of my workshops and my trainings who took these teachings on and started to apply them in his work. And then one day he said to me, would you mind coming and speaking to the kids that I teach? I work at a vocational high school for kids that have been labeled. And they haven't made it in the public school system. They've been kicked out of that. And they come to me, and we work with them here. He said, would you come and speak to those kids? I said, certainly. Now, I'm going into a public school system, and you know in the public school system, you can't say things like God and Spirit, and, you know. So I had to watch my language. And we went in that day, and it was an incredible experience. It really was. And I met some kids that were angry, depressed, feeling like they were victims. But there was a spark in them. And even though they were very resistant at first, someone would actually get up and walk out and mince no words in telling us that they thought that, let's just say they didn't choose watch their language. And they'd come back, and they'd walk out and come back. But eventually it began to take hold. And it was amazing. After that very first week, the kids said, can you come back next week? I said, sure. And I came back next week. And the same thing happened that week. They said, can you come back next week? Now, this was not a year ago, last December. And they kept saying, can you come back next week? And I'm going, sure. And after I'd go, sure, I'd go to Chris and go, okay, what are we going to talk about next week? So I started pulling some material from my other workshops and things that I do here and changed the languaging a little bit. And we started teaching this stuff. And the results were nothing less than miraculous. And it became the program that we now call Out of the Matrix. And it's probably one of the most spiritual things I've ever done that uses secular language. And, you know, truth is truth. Doesn't matter how you say it. Truth is truth. And I've watched lives be changed in ways that people on a spiritual path would be amazed by. And I'm like a proud parent. And these are like my kids. And today there's 3 of them here with us. Ben called me last night, about midnight, I guess, wasn't it? And said, what would you think if I came to the service tomorrow morning? And my heart just lit up. I said, that would be awesome.